Okay, this is somewhat of a curveball today. We're going to be talking about the impact of messaging in the political realm and also the ripple effects into our arena. And we've got a guest who is Travis Trawick, who is the CEO of a company called RoboCent. And I'm going to lay claim to the invention of this acronym, which is Political Messaging Service Provider, a PMSP. When we first talked, you were like, what was that? I'm like, okay, this has got to be the category that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I actually had to check with ChatGPT on that one, and it knew exactly immediately.
So just in terms of a benchmark, in the 2024 election cycle, political messaging essentially detonated. We're talking over 25 billion SMS messages, driving potentially a $2.5 billion engine of urgency, targeting, and voter engagement. And yes, it was messy, expensive, and incredibly effective. Travis, welcome.
Hello.
How's your day been?
My day's been fantastic.
Great.
Loving Miami.
Let's start off with what are the biggest takeaways from the 2024 political messaging cycle in terms of scale and innovation that occurred from your perspective?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we see the 25 billion number thrown out quite a bit, and it's hard to see exactly where that's going to fall.
Yeah, so let's pause there for a moment. Just to give you a sense here, some of us have been in, like me, I'm like Merlin, I've been around forever and I keep having to get younger and younger with all the changes. But the reality is, when I said 25 billion, that's a 2.5 billion market for you, a total addressable market. How do we get that? So tell me the range of a price of a message that you deliver for political messaging.
Yeah, so on average, my clients are paying anywhere between 3 and 12 cents.
3 and 12 cents.
SMS, MMS,
12
video.
cents. So that's how we get to that type of number. And then from your perspective, our perspective, as a wholesaler, I would be looking at that at maybe, three quarters of a cent to be able to deliver that. So there's a ripple effect that goes through the ecosystem. And it's not just quadrennial political elections, meaning the presidential elections, which is exactly what you were about to address probably.
Yeah, exactly. So 2024, we saw a massive increase in scale and adoption among political campaigns and political action committees using texting for outreach. We saw it originate quite a while ago, but it's becoming more and more mainstream to where more and more political campaigns are seeing it as a viable option for their voter contact. And not just viable, but the best way to contact voters.
The best way.
Directly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it bypasses radio and TV, and you can get, direct analytics on exactly how your individual voters are responding and interacting with your engagement.
Yeah. So, Travis, I consider myself a little weird because I'm in the messaging business and fell into this, but you seem to be even weirder that you're in the political messaging. So tell us your story.
Well, I originally got into political outreach in 2011. I was in high school, and somebody was passing...
You were in high school?
I was in high school, yeah.
Okay.
Somebody was passing around a phone to volunteer on a political campaign for $10 an hour, and that sounded fantastic. I needed money for Chick-fil-A Tuesday, and ended up doing that and working on that campaign and many others over the years. We just were seeing how much money was being spent on text outreach and voice outreach back in the day. Just completely inflated numbers, and what I charge can still be expensive, especially with what wholesale providers in this room see. But it's actually can be low compared to a lot of other PMSPs in the industry. It can be, absolutely. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity.
And so, and just by way of insight, when you start talking about the political realm and people getting involved in their teens, early 20s, that's how the system works. So you speak to that as well. You're the professional here. I'm just the interloper, right?
Yeah. No, in politics, it's definitely an early game as well. And campaigns are always fresh. You're always seeing new political campaigns start or action committees. But a lot of the people are the same. So educating these people is a lot of what I do. Educating these political professionals on how text outreach can be effective for their constituents and for their engagement, and educating on them on the best practices. I have so many clients that come to me and say, I know I need to be texting, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of what I'm doing, and how I'm different than a lot of what is going on in this room. I do a lot of the hands-on on the front lines of onboarding these clients and registering them, making sure that they're compliant, and then helping with their strategy and targeting and implementation from all the way from idea to execution.
So we've gone through the quadrennial election cycle,
Yes.
as it's called, and tell me a little bit more about how you fill the gap post quadrennial election cycle, because the reality is there are far more elections than just presidential, Senate, and House. I have a friend who's involved as a political consultant in Texas, and he's involved in judiciary elections in Texas. That's how it works.
Yeah. People are actually surprised a lot to hear about how many different kinds of elections there are. Obviously, we know about
Dog
the presidential, the dog catchers all the way down. And so there's of course, we're going to follow revenue or really usage statistics along these presidential years and midterm elections, but that doesn't mean it evaporates year after year.
Yeah.
There's plenty of opportunities for political messaging and nonprofit that falls completely outside of an election date.
Yeah, these are adjacent verticals that you can expand into.
Exactly. And also within the political sphere, candidates, sometimes these elections are lasting 16 months. And it's a lot of opportunity to be engaging with voters early on. And then not just with engagement for these campaigns, but also for polling and surveying, or also fundraising, which are also the biggest use cases for political messaging. And that can happen year round, especially for like PACs or something, again, that are not tied to a specific election.
PACs are for those political action committees.
Yes.
Okay. And so, from a campaign messaging perspective, what do you see as certain themes that are starting to flow through in terms of outreach and engagement?
So I was talking to somebody earlier about this. Really, every message can be fundraising. Every message can tie back into a call to action to have some level of engagement directly with the campaign. And I'm sure people in this room are getting fundraising texts from different PACs or from political campaigns completely outside of their district you can't even vote for. And so a lot of my candidates are reaching out to broader geographic areas. Because typically, my clients and the people that I serve are very geographically locked to specific districts. Maybe not the political action committees that have a wider spread, but a city councilman or a county commissioner or dog catcher have very specific geographic locations that they can target. And they can't just increase the number of voters that they're contacting because they only have so many. So one of the first steps that we do is making sure that we're contacting the right voters with good targeting data, and not just the right voters, but the right phone number for that voter.
Yeah, so you're now moving into the compliance aspect, which is really very highly regulated, if you think about it, relative to this kind of dialogue in the space. What are the things that you are doing to ensure that you are ahead of the curve relative to the specific requirements of political messaging compliance?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There's actually some new FCC rules going into effect April 11th, I believe, regarding opt-out compliance and a bunch of those other very specific rules. So we take a lot of that off the plate of our clients and being able to help them full service, educating them on correct opt-out instructions in their messaging, targeting the right voters, and using brand identification to make sure that everything is fully compliant. And we also do voice messaging. So then you have 30-day limit where you can only contact your voters 3 times in 30 days. And then also opt-out requirements on all voice messaging. That only goes to landlines. So there's a lot of variance there.
So you've got a captured audience here in the context of what is it that you would be looking for them, from your perspective, for them to be able to be more assisting in you being able to do your job?
Honestly, the biggest complaint that I get from my customers is urgency. Sitting here today, we had 3 different elections.
We need it yesterday?
We need it yesterday. We need it yesterday. And before February 3rd, whenever we had unregistered messaging, they could just pay a higher fee and have less deliverability, but still get their messaging out to their voters with 80%, 90% deliverability. And as of February 3rd, that's no longer an option. So we have a lot of campaigns reaching out to us that need very urgent outreach that simply get turned down. So being able to have a faster approval system that is more fluid for the brands registering will create a more unified experience and allow them to get their messaging out quicker. Another thing to note as well is basically, at least my understanding, is everything that we've been talking about in this room today is a lot of A2P messaging. And then even P2P, it's defined differently. In this room, it's probably defined as me and you texting each other individually on our phones, but we advertise peer-to-peer outreach.
Yeah.
So we don't do any bulk automated opt-in consent messaging. Everything that we're doing is using human agents. We have 30 different agents on staff that get a notification, hey, John Smith for Congress has a text going out at 2 o'clock, begin sending, and they individually click send for every text going through our platform.
Now, as we were preparing for this earlier today, you said that you had a question for me.
Yes.
So what's your question?
Here we go. What was the first presidential election that saw broad SMS adoption?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm like Merlin. I've been around a long, long time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw that question to the audience. In the context, I'll turn it this way. We'll give you 3 options, show of hands. So option number 1 is, you said presidential election, right?
Presidential.
Okay. Is 2004, which I believe was George W. Bush against John Kerry. Who do you think it was 2004? Show of hands. Wow, 0. Okay. 1. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. So option 2 is 2008, which is Barack Obama against John McCain. Okay. It's about a third, maybe? Yeah? All right, option 3 is 2012, which again was Barack Obama against Mitt Romney. What do you think? Nobody. 1. All right, 1 and 1. So you all think it's 2008. Actually, this is a trick question. Because it was a presidential election, but the presidential election was in 2001 in the Philippines. And it was Gloria Arroyo who turned out hundreds of thousands of people in the Philippines through person-to-person messaging, SMS, to counter an attempted coup that was going on in the Philippines at the time. She became eventually elected president of the Philippines. How's the answer?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Better than our audience, unfortunately.
So we all got it wrong. Any questions from the audience for Travis? The white hot spotlight of the quickfire discussion.
Of the quickfire, yeah.
Yes, hi, I'm David Diggs.
Hello.
How do you handle the burning topic of consent? Do you have permission to send all these messages, whether A to P or P to P? I don't agree with your characterization of this.
Yeah, so with the peer-to-peer outreach that we're doing, our customers do not have prior written authorization to text the people that they are texting. And the loophole that we're using is the FCC declaratory ruling allowing human agents to be responsible for the individual sending of the messages. So what you see through our platform is literally the agent portal, and it's a screen that refreshes as fast as you click send, but you are still, our agents are all individually clicking send message one by one with the ability to modify the content, which is meeting the FCC definition for not being an auto dialer. I'm sorry?
Well, great. We've got 5 minutes left for the group to throw back to.
Perfect.
So, thank you very much. Oh, we got another one. Sorry. The Twilio gentleman.
Please.
I'm just curious, Travis.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like Paul. I'm a messaging nerd, fell into it, and in my local race for mayor, I had a mayor candidate who did that exact practice, and the content was excellent. Like, I had no problem with it, but he didn't have my consent, and ultimately he didn't get my vote. And a large of it was based on that. I'm curious, do you see any blowback politically that's measured in any way? I mean, the Gloria example is a great one for like winning, but I'm curious, like, spam is a negative experience and it can land back on, a candidate in interesting ways. I'm curious if any of your candidates have expressed any concerns on that point.
A lot of them express concerns. It's actually one of the first questions I get a lot is, am I going to piss off more voters? And I'm being verbatim here, then I'm going to win to my cause. And the answer is always yes, because we are allowing very straightforward opt-out mechanisms for our clients, or for the recipients of the messaging. And then we also are using AI technology to not just match keywords for opt-out consent, but also for any messaging that may see their sentiment as being negative. We are removing those people from any future outreach. but it's absolutely a concern. And one of the things that our platform does is we have a human review on every message that gets scheduled. So whenever one of our political action committees or nonprofits or campaigns are sending a message, it gets reviewed by a human, the content of the message, to make sure that it is compliant against all of the applicable regulations and laws.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reality of political advertising, especially political negative advertising, there's a built-in drop-off in terms of support as a result of broadcasting a negative ad, quote unquote, which is in the political parlance a contrast ad. But over time, then it starts to grow where the voting population starts recognizing whether they like that or not, and usually they do, because all this is highly researched. So, I've heard it called the dead cat bounce as a result of those types of advertising, and that falls into that category.
So yeah, that's a good point.
Microphone, you're good. Go ahead. No, I was just reinforcing
No, I completely
the question
agree.
and the answer.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay.
Hey, Jonathan from Text-to-Mall. So you mentioned earlier that you're seeing a lot of your clients that are like, oh my gosh, I'm getting more voters to the polls because I'm texting them. I'm really trying to hold that in comparison to, I don't know anyone that's ever gotten one of these texts and says, yes, I got one of these. So like, I'm just trying, like, do you know something that I don't?
So
I'm trying to figure that out.
we don't get just in terms of support to the individual message being received, but also fundraising, right? Like we see fantastic results in fundraising whenever we're doing any of these types of engagement texts for our political action committees. That's one of the biggest use cases, is doing fundraising campaigns with funnels and encouraging donations. And also, it's important to note that we're not doing this on a national scale typically. A lot of what we're doing is very localized. So we're doing local mayoral elections, smaller universes. And the statistics show that messaging is better received in local environments versus a national scale. And those types of engagements that we're seeing are actually doing fantastic. And our customers are very satisfied with the service and the results that they're seeing because of that.
Just a follow on that questions. I think, yeah, in terms of demographics and age, rural, what are you seeing in terms of the success of political messaging that you deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as like targeting and everything, a lot of our clients will come to us with their already pre-curated lists of voters that they want to be targeting based on their own internal methods. But then we also have plenty of clients that are looking for that direction and understanding how to engage with their voters in a successful way and which of the voters that they are engaging with. So a lot of what we do is creating these curated, targeted lists of voters that match certain demographic information or political affiliation or affinity, voting turnout history, to make sure that we are only targeting voters that we know are going to participate, that are going to support our client, have the highest probability of supporting our client, and we'll also have the most engagement. And one of the other things on top of that is the phone number itself. I think I spoke to that earlier, is ensuring that the phone number that we are contacting, using several different services for lookups and identification, to make sure that that phone number is connected to that voter and it has a high confidence rating. And all of those things together improve the experience.
Jonathan Ezel from Verizon. You talked about A2P and P2P. But of course, CTAA's guidelines, which are not FCC regulations or law, talk about non-consumer rather than A2P. And I'm wondering if you're suggesting that the messages on behalf of a campaign, even if there is a human initiator, fall into consumer versus non-consumer with the current CTAA guidelines.
So I have read those guidelines. I think that's a little bit above my expertise to be able to speak to the classification of that. But I am aware of those guidelines, and we do typically require or request that our clients do have consent to contact their voters, and some of them do provide that. But again, no, a lot of it is happening at the opt-in, at the human agent level, so that those are the individual messages being sent. But the best practices by CITA are recommended, of course, for ensuring opt-in consent. And that's why, of course, we ensure that the opt-in, opt-out mechanisms that we're using are very robust.
Excellent. Thank you, Travis.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.